Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. This is the latest in the series of webcasts from the NORAs. The 22nd annual NORAs is coming up. It's almost upon us. We are just under 3 weeks to go before we find out who the winners are going to be in the National Online Recruitment Awards. The series of webcasts that we have here is where we are able to speak more closely with companies and people involved in the NORAs, people who are involved in making the NORAs happen. Before that, I just want to point out our finalists for the NORAs this year. As you can see here, we have, I think in total, there are 82 separate organizations. Some of them are finalists for a couple of awards, CV Library and GradCracker. But as I say, the awards coming up in just under 3 weeks' time. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there. So if you're with any of these organizations, we absolutely look forward to seeing you at the NORAs in 3 weeks' time. Our judges right now are in conclave, as they say in the Vatican. They're poring over all of the recruitment websites that are candidates that are finalists for this year's event, and they're looking at them all from the perspective of a job seeker. If your website is looking great, if it's working well, if it really impresses our judges, then you're in with a very, very good chance of being called out as a winner. And if you are a winner, let me just fetch this. If you are a winner, you might be walking home with one of these in a couple of weeks' time. So, without too much further ado, I'm going to invite my very, very special guest to the screen. If I can just activate his camera. Martin Herbst from JobAdder. JobAdder are our headline sponsor for the NORAs this year and partner. Good afternoon. How did the Valaria?
I'm very good. I'm dealing with a bit of jet lag, but other than that, I'm doing really well. Happy to be here. Happy that on behalf of JobAdder, to be able to partner with the NORAs.
Absolutely. So, jet lag. You're normally based in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, so I'm going to confuse some people because I live in Sydney, so came over from Australia. Got here in London at the moment, Monday, and leaving this evening. But you can probably tell it's not the strongest Australian accent. So originally from the States, moved out to Australia in 2013.
Fantastic. So almost 10 years in Australia. So in terms of jet lag, I think the most jet lag you get is when you go back, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, actually, it's probably worse when you're going east, when you're going against the sun. You can it just really screws you up. So I think I've perfected the art of just having a short enough trip where you're just in a daze for the whole time, and then you don't get too acclimated on either end. But I'll worry about that in the next couple of days.
Fantastic. So for people who aren't as informed as they should be, and shame on them, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and JobAdder, just to give a bit of context?
Yeah, so I guess for myself, I talked a little bit about my nationality, originally from the States. I've been in tech for well over 20 years now. I didn't start off in tech. Came out of university in the States, kind of following the herd and getting into finance and Wall Street. Figured out after a few years that wasn't for me, and really wanted to go after something that I was really more passionate about as a consumer. So I ended up getting into digital media. Shortly after that, I met my wife in New York City. We moved out to San Francisco. I got a job at eBay, and so into eBay Classifieds, and did some general manager roles, running some businesses there. And I was asked to move out to Australia in 2013 to run Gumtree in Australia. And there's actually a Gumtree here in the UK as well. And so then at the end of, I did that for a long time at eBay and then Gumtree, and I needed a break. And I didn't plan it this way, but it was serendipitously planned right before COVID hit. Yeah. And so I left at the end of 2019 and joined JobAdder middle of, right after the pandemic started, which was a, pretty surreal experience in July of 2020. And haven't really looked back since. I mean, it's just been an amazing ride. It's weird to say it's only not even 2.5 years. It's kind of flown by, but at the same time, it feels longer than that. Yeah. And we're recruitment software. We service primarily staffing agencies from all different sizes, but our base has always been Australia, New Zealand, but we've been expanding rapidly overseas in the UK and North America. And the company has grown pretty amazingly since I've joined. We've gone from about 90 employees to over 200 now. And I'm out here visiting our team in the UK. It's the second time I've been out here since COVID hit. We came back in March, and the team is they're just awesome. They're just rocking it here. So I'm very happy to be on the trip.
Yeah. So there's a particular strata of people out there who moved to the current job that they're in during the pandemic, and it's a particularly unique experience because, of course, all that would be going on at that time. And again, if you're physically located, even if you're working remotely, but physically located in Australia, it was a very different pandemic experience to that you would find elsewhere in the world. I know there's off and on lockdowns and just that different pattern of not only people getting infections, but how companies responded to it, particularly where software companies are very much international and working with clients all over the world. How do you balance all of those? And how did you balance all of those and grow through that period?
Yeah, I think I think like a lot of other companies, any companies, whether it be tech companies or any companies, we're sort of figuring it out as we go along. And I think no one's got a definitive answer yet. And like, this is exactly how it should work. Hybrid, remote first, flexible in the office. Fundamentally, we're a remote first company. So, and we recognize that we need to go that way just to be able to be flexible, to be able to accommodate the growth that we had. And also just the balance between work and lifestyle, et cetera. Yeah. And it's such an interesting topic, Stephen. Like you can get me going on this one, but there's a few. So a lot of times I'll talk about how we're connected, but also that there's forces of disconnection, and there's probably 3 or 4 different forces of disconnection that we've experienced in the last 10 years, and particularly the last couple of years. Yeah, but that we're going through as a growing global tech company. I think one essentially is, it can be actually technology, ironically, so technology, although it's, can be connecting, can be very disconnecting if we're always on our phones or stuck in social media. Yeah. The other is, how we're actually, trying to sort of more of a global sort of workforce, and how do we actually connect with each other. The third is how we're growing in numbers of the actual number of employees as a company. And now that all of a sudden these new relationships that you have to be able to establish as you go through that growth. And the fourth and the final, which we've really experienced the last couple of years, is just the remote aspect. Not, the lack of the physical, connection. And how do you actually get around that? And how do you have the same productivity, same long-term impact, long-term health and vitality by doing that? And I think technology can only do so much in that regard. I mean, we're, a species that's evolved over millions of years, telling stories around a fire, right? And it just doesn't have the same impact although we're, doing pretty well in Zoom. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here this week, is because we're bringing the team in to be able to create those connections and all those things that you don't get sometimes when you're just working virtually. Yeah. I before the pandemic, I did work with a company in Melbourne, Video My Job, and have a bit of an insight. I wouldn't say a big insight, but a bit of an insight to the Australian perspective. And I think that because of the nature of that, then companies, and yourself in particular, would have a head start on organizations worldwide. First of all, Australia physically is remote from the rest of the world when you have clients all over the world. So the ability to go and visit clients face to face in their office just wasn't there before. So you were already set up for that distance work. And also the nature of your software means that recruitment firms can have any of the recruiters working from anywhere, either via the app or via desktop functionality. All of the information is available in the cloud, and it means that agency owners could be on a beach somewhere or in any part of the world running their business, or recruiters making placements, speaking with clients, and doing deals. So the software is set up for that. So I would imagine that within your organization, then you would
you'd be working in that sense already, because it's what you do as a business.
Yeah, and that's, the words remote first, I think, are carefully chosen. Like, if you think about going back to, let's say, 2008, after the iPhone came out, and a lot of tech companies, particularly consumer-facing companies, some of mine in particular, we adopted, and we really around mobile first. Why do you say mobile first? Well, you put that first because there's an elegance and a discipline by putting mobile first, and if you create an amazing experience that way, then everything else can flow from that, and then the desktop experience as well. So if you're focused on remote first, and you put that thinking that way, then you're able to expand, in a much more virtual, global way than trying to back into it. You know what I'm saying? And I think your Australian lens or view on Australians and a company being more adept at that, I think is the first time I've heard that, but I think you're really onto something, because particularly as an American coming to Australia and seeing some of the cultural differences where Americans will be much more American centric. Yeah. Because Australia is so far away, there's already that outward facing view and overcompensation to try and connect with the rest of the world. And the tolerance and the appetite for travel for Australians is amazing, right? And you understand, why after, going on a 30-hour journey from Sydney to London. Yeah. But I have a funny quick story about that. When we moved from San Francisco to Sydney, and we had started skiing a little bit in Tahoe, which is about 3 to 4 hour drive from San Francisco. Yeah. And we asked, well, where do you go skiing around here? And someone said, and I won't never forget these words, it's like, well, you can fly, Japan's only 10 hours away.
Yeah. Is there not the snowy mountains in Australia somewhere up the east coast? But that's maybe the only mountain range at all out there. But we often in the UK refer to we'll talk about people in the Midwest and that they'll travel hours and hours just to get milk, and if you then take that to Australia and people who are experienced, in being in the outback or going from Australia to the next country, then it's an overnighter. It's not a 1 hour travel. If I want to go to London from Glasgow, it's an hour on the plane, and that makes a lot of things possible. But going back to what you were talking about there, and I think it ties in with what JobAdder does, is that the bonds that people have with their employer. Has your lighting just gone?
Yes, it doesn't seem that I exist here. I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. So the sensor's gone off. It'll be fine. We'll fix it in post. Okay. But yeah, the bonds that people have with their employer and with their workmates will have been weakened in this period, and companies are kind of scrabbling to work out ways in which they can reinforce those bonds. So you're saying meeting the team here face to face physically is a great way to do that. But when you're remote first, then you've come at the problem from that being a basic premise. This is the way we work. This is the way we do things. And when you hire people to that circumstance.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, we don't put location really on the top of the list in terms of where that is. It's been an adjustment period when it comes to that. I think we're all adjusting when we think about location. I think really time zone overlap is the most important thing. If you think about it this way, we've set up one way we've grown at JobAdder is we have grown the teams here in London quite a bit, from about a dozen to about 40 now. Yeah. North America from just a few people to a good couple dozen or so. Yeah. And but also for our product and development. And when you're doing product and development, we've actually grown a team based in Vietnam. And it's that time zone overlap that's really important to at least have a way to be able to. We got someone to be able to fix the lights. So cool. Perfect. So that does come into consideration.
When you mentioned time zones, I know from speaking with companies who, with agencies who have suppliers in different time zones, that customer support, customer success is vital. And when you've got a supplier who is literally on the other side of the planet, that must be a real challenge, making sure that you are able to cater for your clients on the ground here.
Yeah. We were just talking about that with someone on our customer success team yesterday. And it's having teams in the UK, North America, Australia, and a few others. We can follow the sun, right? And that's, we take really a lot of pride in that, in terms of support, in terms of responsiveness. That we can have someone close out one day, but then you've got someone in the States sort of ready to take on the next shift. And so it can be a big benefit.
Yeah. So one thing I'm always really interested in with organizations at the scale which you are, and dealing with the spread of recruitment firms. I used to own and run recruitment agencies, and what I really loved about that and working as a frontline recruiter was the insight that it gave me to employers, what they did, how they did it, and you could see the shifting sands of the marketplace, people moving from one employer to another, or progressing their career, or suddenly one market is up and the other one's down. On a more meta level, then you're working with recruitment firms who are in turn doing that. So you've got that helicopter view, and I'm really interested in the perspective that you have of not only global markets, but maybe especially the UK and European marketplace, in patterns of behaviour of not only job seekers but the recruiters themselves, and what that's telling you.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming into the job, realizing that with the platform that we have, right? Because at the moment we have well over 4,000 different accounts or clients on JobAdder, over 1,000 or so in the UK, and then two or 3,000 in Australia, New Zealand, and a few hundred more in North America. But because of we're essentially the operating system that powers the staffing agencies, there's a lot of data that's there as well. And so I was really curious, just thinking about, if we think about the last 2 years, the last 2 years have been a recruitment boom. It's been amazing. Starting in about July of 2020, through if you take just those 2 years to the this past June. And so that's so if you're not doing well in recruitment now, you probably shouldn't be in recruitment. But we know that not all agencies are performing at the same level, and when the tide does take a turn, and of course the question is how much, how soon. But it'll soften at some point, and sooner or later. But despite the tightness in the labor markets, how do you prepare for that? What's going to happen in the next 2 years? And what are some of the higher performing agencies doing that maybe that the others aren't, that are going to make them more durable or more resilient? And of course, there's questions around, hey, how much are you specializing? How much are you diversifying, let's say permanent versus temp? But there's some things that we can see to be able to provide those insights, as you said. So we did take a look at that. We actually looked at mostly at the moment across the 2,400 or so agencies in Australia and New Zealand. And we were able to essentially index based on certain metrics. So we looked at 4 different metrics. I think it was growth in number of jobs, like job volume. It was number of seats, or net growth in actual consultants. But it was also efficiency metrics like placement ratios and time to fill ratios. And then index it from 0 to 100 to see, the ones that were performing at the highest levels based on the scoring methodology. And then we're like, what can we find out? Are there any correlating reasons or other factors that we can see that for these higher sort of index agencies? And tried out a few different hypotheses, and then the one thing, and that it didn't show a correlation, but we found one. We kind of hit a bit of a gold mine. And this is going to sound self-serving, but I think sheepish Joe must say it. But the one correlating factor was the percentage adoption of core functionality on the platform.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, what is technology? What is SaaS? What is, particularly an ATS or CRM?
Yeah.
It's, technology works well when it essentially allows you to run faster as a business. It allows you to make, it's an extension of your core workflows and your activities, and allows you to do it more efficiently, more effectively, and make decisions, in a smarter way. So if you are actually utilizing that technology and adopting it and getting more fuller value out of it, then it's also a reflection of how well you are running your business. And you're running your organization, you're running your operations, and how you're hiring and onboarding and getting your team to follow the best practices and workflows and the things that based on measurement that are going to produce the best outcome.
Yeah. One you mentioned there about the change in market and the ability of recruiters to address that. In my experience over 30 years in the business, then I know that whenever there's an imbalance in the market, if there's a shortage of candidates or jobs, then recruitment firms do well because they're about matching one to the other. So when one really needs the other and there's a shortage, then that's where recruitment companies come into play. And in that period that I've been in recruitment, I've seen quite a few times where it's switched from an excess of jobs or candidates, and that switching of the market. I was in a conversation with someone earlier this week, actually last week, in Chicago, and he spoke about, as matter of factly as you like, he said, well, with the upcoming recession. And whilst we'd all been kind of talking around, this might happen and so on, it kind of made it more firm to me that, yeah, maybe we should be thinking about it as a definite, because if it doesn't happen, then fine. But if it does, then we need to be prepared. We need to be thinking ahead and thinking, right, well, if the market flips, if there aren't, if there isn't such full employment as there was before, then we need to be in a position to do something about that. And it's always the case that people who own and run recruitment agencies they've been through a couple of peaks and troughs in the marketplace, and they've seen things move, but they're more agile, and they're normally thinking, right, if we have to suddenly change what we're doing, how can we do that? Do we either shrink as a company? That might be laying off staff. Do we change the service offering that we have to clients? Do we go for more perm or more temp? And how can we get more out of what we have? How can we squeeze more juice out of the lemon? And in terms of technology, if you have the right technology, then you should have the information that informs your decisions. So you know what you're doing, you can plan ahead of time. And also you can have that agility built in, and you can train your recruiters to be ready for it. As you were saying, using more functionality. Recruiters, and I know from experience, are by nature slow to change. And I know that they get used to what they're doing and they stick with it. But if you have an environment that embraces continual change and you have the tools to do it, then you can have more agile recruiters who can say, right, this market has died or has shrunk considerably. I'm now going to, before that dries up completely, I'm going to research and find a new market that I can work in where I can use my skills. And if you've got the technology to do that, then you can research and establish yourself in a new sector for when that comes. And as you say, using the extra functionality.
Yeah, and I think that there's something you said in there that sort of the core of it, which I think is a challenge for any business leader. And I found that with growing and trying to scale previous tech firms, it's that balance between the short term and the long term. And I've often found that I'm overemphasizing near term, results, and so maybe at the compromise, the detriment to what we could be doing more for the longer term. Because because we are measured usually in weeks and months and quarters, and so of course, and the near term delivery and near term commitments really matter. If you're not delivering the short term, then you won't have a longer term.
Yeah.
However, there's very few people I speak to, agency owners, directors, or other tech leaders that are saying that say we're training our people too much. We're developing our people too much. Yeah. We're taking too much time doing longer term planning. It's usually always the opposite. And we look at, it's kind of astounding because we do look at the overall adoption of that core functionality. We have sort of different tiers: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is kind of like your table stakes, your meat and potatoes of the recruitment flows. But and what we do with the product is try and make it very intuitive, very easy to use, and we provide e-learning, sort of learn by doing type of training certifications and really good support. But still, yet I think only about 50% of the core functionality is adopted on average, and so there's tremendous opportunity for companies, I think, to slow down a bit and make sure that they are, as you said, squeezing more out of the lemon, because the tighter and the more efficient, the more effective, and the more value you're getting out of your current technology going forward, I think that, that just the more disciplined and durable you're going to be, in the coming years.
So in the position that you're in with, multiple, hundreds of clients across maybe 100 or more countries, what do you do with your influence to encourage that continual learning on behalf of the recruiters on the front line? Are there ways in which you can affect their behavior where they have an incentive to be using additional functionality that they weren't using yesterday, and continually be adding to their skills within the JobAdder platform?
Yeah, I mean, we have an excellent learning team that actually builds out an in-app experience in the platform experience, powered by actually an application called WalkMe, which essentially is learning by doing. So you get different certificates for different modules for different sort of recruitment areas. It literally has you take yourself through the JobAdder platform and to do the actual usage of the platform itself, the software itself. Because there's only so much we as individuals, as people, can learn by reading something, or maybe even watching a video. I remember, it kind of brings me back to the days in university, sort of nodding asleep, during the lecture. I have to be doing something with my hands physically. Like, I don't like to read manual. Just give me the thing and I'll start to use it. But, guide me and scaffold me to be able to do that. So, the WalkMe, or the e-learning experience that we have and the certifications that you can get is really is best in class. And so I think that goes a long way.
That kind of reminds me of the HubSpot model of certification, where not only there's videos, and if you've ever done HubSpot training, then it's good to put it on double time, so you can do it double fast. Yes. But in the HubSpot training, there's videos, there's manuals, and so on, and there's little tests. But what they do is they seed their training with aha moments where they'll show something. You go, hold on a second, I can use this right now. Let me just stop the training while I go and do this thing. And it might be setting up a drip email campaign or whatever it is in HubSpot. So within the training, if there's that that element to tangible takeaways that you can be using right now, then I can see people making more time for training, because they know it's going. Well, frontline recruiters, they know it's going to turn into fees, which of course turn into commission.
Yeah, absolutely. And that aha moments, like when you come about finding something, you find a new shortcut, or you find a new way to do something, to find just you're shaving time and you're reducing friction. That's amazing. Like when people are it can be serendipitous, and then exactly as you said, okay, now I can actually rethink how I'm doing all of this in terms of maybe how I'm shortlisting candidates or how I'm sourcing or whatnot. And so the certifications that then we give. Really for a lot of JobAdder users, becomes like HubSpot, like a badge of honor, and it shows that, hey, I really care about recruitment, and becomes a almost a mark of excellence that I'm investing into myself using a platform that really cares about best in class recruitment. And
of course, if recruitment agencies are encouraging their staff to do that, then they're investing in their own staff, and that's a good way of securing your own staff. In the recruitment industry, it's of course rife with people moving from one company to another. But if you can embrace your recruiters and hold them tight and show that you're investing in them, then they're far less likely to be tempted to go off elsewhere, and the risk that would entail in going elsewhere. So embracing them there. You mentioned there shortcuts, and I know full well that recruiters are always looking for some hack or tip or trick or way to use the tools that they have in a way that wasn't intended because they've found a sneaky way. It's a bit like finding your road to work. You found a back lane that you can use, and recruiters are always doing that. But with technology companies like yourselves, then one of the best ways that the tech company can learn to improve their products is learn what the frontline recruiters are doing, and be aware of the way your tech's being used, so you can then further improve your own product. Is that a key part of what you do?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so. My experience before JobAdder actually was not really in B2B or SaaS or enterprise. It was really in consumer-facing digital. So first digital media, and then e-commerce, and then mobile payments with PayPal.
Yeah.
And so when you're designing product or user experiences you're designing for the masses, right? You're designing essentially for millions of people, millions of consumers. And so when you design that interface, it has to be very clean. It has to reduce the friction. It has to be very intuitive, particularly in your marketplace, and if you're trying to sell something or trying to look for something, find something.
Yeah.
And that kind of discipline has taken a while to carry over into B2B, into B2B SaaS, and particularly some enterprise software, which can be horrible. A lot of that can be designed by IT experts, but they're not doing it in a way where there's a discipline in terms of the customer feedback loop, in terms of the end user feedback loop, and from a really design discipline. So coming into JobAdder, I was just absolutely pleasantly surprised that that ethos really has always been in the design, in the product team, and in actually the product itself, where we're always looking for ways to be able to find because you're managing lots of information. So how do you actually manage lots of information in a way that can feel clean and intuitive, and the little shortcuts to be able to introduce it as part of that?
And of course, whilst it's not a given, when you improve a product for recruiters, then the recruiter experience, which is very seldom talked about, but if the recruiter experience steps up and they can either do more with the time that they have, or they've got more free time to do the things that they've been putting to one side, then often what's going to get done in those times is that they can address the human side of dealing with candidates and clients. They can be speaking with them more. They can be focusing more on those soft skills because the technology is taking care of the stuff that should be automated, the stuff that they should be getting through much quicker than if they were doing it manually. So that ultimately ends up in a better candidate experience.
Yeah, and I was really pleased to see how I think the NORA's really talks a lot about the candidate experience and how even much more important that is these days. But you're absolutely right. We don't want users and the recruiters who use JobAdder to be a slave to the technology, or to really just dread the admin. That's that could be part of using technology, and to sort of to sludge your way through that. It should be delightful. It should be easy, so you can actually spend quality time with candidates, or spend time developing business and with your clients.
Yeah. I love being able to describe software as delightful, but actually I think it's an achievable aim. So on that high note, we're talking about candidate experience. I know we've gone a little bit over time. I want to thank you very much for joining me today. Just as the lights go.
Yeah, the lights heard you that it was time to go, I think.
Someone should put another pound coin in the meter. But thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, Martin. It's been an absolute pleasure, really interesting. I hope to see you in person sometime. But I know you're going to be heading back to Australia very shortly. I know that we're going to see a whole load of the JobAdder team and maybe some clients too at the NORAs in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone who's been watching. Thanks everyone who's watching on replay and everyone who has been seeing us on social media. This has been streamed live to LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So there are plenty of opportunities to view, as they say in the television business. But on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much again, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks a lot, Stephen, for having me. See you next
You're very
time.
welcome.